However you are and whenever you are, welcome to Good Souls, the Paranormal Now. I'm Alan B. Smith. Join us as we traverse the cosmic highway of paranormal portals and tantalizing turnoffs. Joining us tonight, it's going to be an awesome night. We have so many of my favorite paranormal investigators on the same show tonight at the same time, plus an amazing documentary filmmaker. And I love these roundtable discussions that we have on Paranormal Now. They're some of my favorite shows. This one includes the director of a documentary called Sounds of the Dead, EVP, directed by Jeremy Norrie, and featuring Debra Jordan-Kauble, Cherie Rathman, Tony Rathman, and we will be covering all things disembodied spirits, evidence, EVPs, of course, but so much more. Because as we know, investigating the paranormal is not only intriguing and fascinating, but it is sometimes challenging and paradoxical. And even those of us in the community, we have beliefs. And then paranormal investigators like our guests go out there and they learn things and they bring that back to us on shows like this to discuss, because I have evolved my ideas of what ghosts are over the years, and likely you have too. And it's because of these paranormal investigators and the work that they do, collecting the evidence, anecdotal or otherwise, and doing their own subjective and objective analysis of these encounters with these entities, whatever they may be, which only feeds, I think, the inherent natural desire that we all have to understand our place in this universe and if there's life after death. So hang in there. They're going to be on in just a moment. And of course, if you're a fan of Paranormal Now, please consider becoming a Patreon member. I put the link in the show notes below. I put my heart and soul into coffee and UFOs and this Paranormal Now podcast. So whatever you can give to help support, I would really appreciate that. And of course, we're going to open up the Skype call-in line in the last 30 minutes. So again, that link is in the show notes. If you want to call in the last 30 minutes, share your ghostly adventures, or ask any of the guests a question. And don't forget, if you are obsessed with coffee, like I am, perhaps unnaturally, we have a 20% discount link for aliencoffeebean.com. So if you go to aliencoffeebean.com, enter mystery, all caps, 20, you'll get 20% discount off of any purchase from their website. And of course, all deliveries are only to the US, not international. All right. So making contact with ghosts by building a rapport with the disembodied is one of many techniques paranormal investigators use to make contact with alleged interdimensional entities or ghosts. My guests tonight are here to discuss effective paranormal investigations. And, we have investigators that have been doing this for, a very long time. And Debra Kauble, who is probably best known for Intruders, as was the title of a Budd Hopkins book about her paranormal experience with extraterrestrials, has been intrigued with this, since I think before that. We'll ask Deb in a sec. And then, of course, Tony and Cherie came into this a little bit later, but they have put so much time and energy and resources and boots on the ground that you have a richness and abundance of evidence that I think is unbelievably compelling. And Jeremy Norrie, who's the director of the documentary Sounds of the EVP, did a fantastic job of creating this amalgamation of insight into a really digestible documentary for those who are just coming to these subjects, as well as those who have been interested in it in a long time. So let's bring in on our roundtable guests, Tony and Cherie. And Jeremy, welcome.
Thank you.
And Debra Jordan-Kauble, welcome.
Hello.
Hello. All right.
Hello.
So Jeremy, since you're the director of the documentary Sounds of the Dead, Tell us a little bit about how you got involved in pursuing the paranormal, because we know your previous documentaries, other than marijuana, really didn't brush up against the paranormal.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have a lot of fascinating interests that are all kinds of odd, different things. And being a filmmaker that's independent, and we're doing these films on a micro budget level, I'm able to kind of pursue different things that are interesting to me and put those out. And if they don't make a ton of money or whatever, it's not that big of a risk to me as a filmmaker. So we're able to explore a lot of things that maybe some other filmmakers wouldn't try to do. And this particular topic came about kind of because of you. And I'm also fascinated by the whole concept of what might, does life go on after we die? I guess that's the best way to put it. And we did a podcast where I was a guest on your show, and I think we discussed maybe working together on a project then. And you did an interview for another film of ours that was kind of a comparing and contrasting on Bigfoot and UFOs. And it was more or less the cultures of those two phenomenons and the people who investigate those things. And I loved doing that film. I loved your responses to those questions. And for me, that is, I think, our best, although the EVP film is pretty good too. But I like the Alien versus Bigfoot. I don't like the name, and I don't like the poster. But I like the product. You know, if I watch that film, I'm very happy with how that came out. And I really love when I'm asking the UFO guys about Bigfoot, and they're like real interested to talk about it. And thought it was real unique for that whole world. And then we were able to kind of get the ball rolling on, hey, let's do another project. And you suggested this, and I thought this sounds great. And you were able to kind of put it together where you knew people that we could talk to, and we were fortunate enough to be able to make it all work. So yeah.
I'm glad it did come together. You know, we're not here to, you know, judge your films, which one is better, but I honestly have to say, like, I really enjoyed Sounds of the Dead. And like the feedback, I know Tony, you know, had some great positive feedback as well. The responses were so positive. And that's not easy to do in this genre, because there's so many paranormal films, especially ghost hunting films and that sort of thing. So Debbie, I wasn't sure when you actually started looking into EVPs. Was it 10 years ago, 30, 20 years ago?
It was about 30 years ago when I did when I got my first EVP. I was using one of those little cassette tapes with the 30 minutes on each side and the little, cassette thing you set on the counter with my nephew. I had, already had been in the UFO community because of all the stuff that happened to us. And I actually was at one point for about 10 years an investigator for MUFON, because I felt like if I could learn more about all that stuff, it wouldn't scare me as much. So that was interesting. But then I started hearing about EVPs, and we had a lot of paranormal activity in my house growing up as a kid. I thought everybody did for a long time. So we did that EVP session in my kitchen one afternoon, my nephew and I, and we got a beautiful voice almost right off the bat. And it was an old man's voice, and it was very clear. And he said, "Are the spirits listening?" And right after it was the voice that sounded like a younger person, like maybe a young boy or a girl, that said, "Can I listen too?" And I had this epiphany at that moment. Oh my God, we're the spirits somewhere else, and somebody's listening for us, and then I was hooked. And I didn't do anything else after that for a while. But then around 2000, about 2005, I just kept feeling pulled back into the paranormal side of everything I was dealing with and things that were happening. So I joined a group in Indianapolis. I did some research and I found a really good, what I felt was a reputable, good group, so I could learn from them. They're all 20 years younger than me, but I learned a lot from them. And I started really, they started calling me the antenna. And I don't know if it had something to do with my other experiences, but it seemed like my recorder was the one that got a lot of the good stuff. So we did that, and I've got, and I've sent you some copies of that. I never really got very much on film. I got some really good photographs of orbs, and I know the group that I was with, their attitude with orbs is, it's all dust and it's all, bugs and pollen and moisture and everything, and probably a lot of it is, but the ones I photographed aren't. That's how I got into it. But I started with my first EVP about 30 years ago.
How do you determine if an orb for you is not a piece of dust, that it's potentially a ghost or a spirit?
I don't have a scientific way to do it. I just go on my gut. But the photographs that I take of the ones that I think, that I think could be something, they may not be either. But they all have a black circle in the center of them. I got several. They look like eyeballs in the middle of the room, and they're. I don't know. I wish I could show you. I've got them on my desktop, but they're a white circle, very not see through, with like what looks like an eye in the middle, a black circle in the middle. And I blew one up one time, and I may have shown you this picture when I blew it up. It looked like you were looking in a mirror at somebody. It looked like there was a face looking up into this or out of this orb, and it looked like the face of an alien. It was weird, but like I said, they could have been dust too, for all I know. But I just felt like I'll be in a room and something will say, "Take a picture over here." So I just snap a picture, and that's usually when I get the weird stuff with the black circles in it. So, but yeah, I'm not a scientist. I'm just felt drawn to this and pulled into it. So
you said antenna. I was thinking maybe magnet.
My crew members, my group members always called me the antenna. They bring her over here. Bring yours. I had a little H1 Zoom audio recorder with the little double stereo mic, and they'd be like, tell her to come over here and sit down.
Yeah.
Sometimes I got pretty good stuff.
You started recording on analog. Cherie and Tony, what did you guys start recording on?
Digital.
Yeah.
We started about 12 years ago and digital was out. So we've done tests with analog and they do work, no doubt about it. You do run the risk of the motor of the recorder making noise, showing up on the tape. Digital are usually smaller. They're easier to transport. I think we usually bring 8 or more of them with us anytime we go. But digital is where we started with.
Yeah. Cherie, you were the impetus, right? For Paranormal Entity Voices.
Yes, you were.
I guess.
I was a complete non-believer 12 years ago. My father was a physics, chemistry, and physical science gentleman. Yeah. So growing up, everything I asked was always scientific answers, scientific reasons for why things happen, how things happen, and spirits, ghosts, just never fell into that category. And then I met my wife, and of course she's watching every paranormal show under the book. And then she's like, you got to watch this with me. Well, I couldn't last 3 minutes. I'm like, okay, this is for TV only.
It's BS.
I did. I'm like, this isn't real. This isn't real. Well, then she cornered me on a Valentine's Day, which normally we'd hang out at a hotel sit by the pool, enjoy some drinks, and have a great weekend. She said, I want to do something different. I said, okay, what do you want to do? She goes, I want to go ghost hunting. And I was like, oh. Well, I had two choices. I could either appease her or have her mad at me until next Valentine's Day. So I did some research online, booked a hotel that had a reputation, thought I was done. And I'm like, wait, they're using equipment. So I think I bought you a night vision camera, EMF, and digital recorder.
And you bought me a mic, actually, a real mic.
Yeah, you had a handheld mic at that time, yeah.
That sounds like true love, guys.
Exactly. Well, I figured it would end up in the closet and sit there for 5 years till we threw it away. But we went, and then she started reviewing the photographs, the video, the recording. I was absolutely blown away. This was our very first investigation.
Yeah.
We had voices on the EVP and no one was around. We had strange anomalies in the photos, and we even had apparition on the video our very first time out. I could not explain it. I could not dismiss it. I could not rationalize it. So I said, let's go back. Let's try it again.
Oh my gosh, we investigated that hotel like more than 50 times.
Yep. And it just kept coming. It just kept coming. So that's how we started.
Yeah. So Jeremy, as you're interviewing people for the documentary and going through their footage and their EVPs, do you find yourself more and more converted to a believer?
Well,
is Jeremy skeptic?
He's got a streak. Yep.
So there's certain things I do really like about it that makes me. I don't know the term believer, because I feel like there's definitely something happening, right? So we can establish that that's happening, but what is happening, I think, is still not fully established, and we have some like possibles on what this could be, right? So I love it when it's so clear that you can hear like Tony pointing this out, like a gender or something where you're like, oh, that like a common accent, like something familiar to you where you're like, oh, that sounds, or they say something that is pertaining to the situation or to the people. I love the ones that are extremely clear. The ones that my ears aren't attuned to it, like some of you guys. I don't hear the same thing as a lot of these other people are hearing during a lot of these ones. But some of them, I feel like, are so clear anyone could hear those, right? Those are the most impressive to me. And then the thing I'm looking for the most. So the thing that's the most impressive to me in this whole world is child reincarnation stories. And I can get into that. But what I want to hear is like some sort of factual information, some sort of something we don't know that can be then verified after the fact. And that is extremely impressive to me. And when those type of situations happen, it's amazing, right?
So you're saying when children are able to report historical facts that they would otherwise not be privy to.
The children's stories are unbelievable. So like, I was really referring to EVPs or anything, if like some sort of a ghost or whatever tells you, my brother was John Smith, he lived in like this town, and you're like, oh, I can then go back and verify that. That's incredible. Like that's really difficult to explain, whereas like if it says something random, I mean, what could that be? It could be anything, and the children stuff. I mean, wow. The children will say first and last names. Like this investigator goes to the children and tries to debunk them. And he shows them like pictures and they're like, this. It's unbelievable. And when you see that as a skeptic type person, you say like, what is happening there? There's almost no way to explain it other than like what the easy explanation is, right? Is that, obviously the child is the reincarnated spirit of this person who previously lived. And like, sure, maybe that is what's happening. And it seems really likely that that's what's happening. But
and yet you struggle with it.
Yeah, it's really difficult, and that gives me questions, right? That kind of lead towards the EVP thing, right? So, like, let's say it is real. This child is this person that died like 10 years ago. So where was the spirit or whatever during this 10-year period? Before it now is in this child. Yeah. And like, it could be in a room with Tony. It could be, you know,
probably is.
Happening. So, yeah.
It sounds like another it sounds like you have another documentary coming, Jeremy.
Oh yeah, I want to do one on the child. And like,
oh, that's great.
That's
cool.
That's in my wheelhouse. I'm doing it.
Yeah. I do find that extraordinarily fascinating as well. In your ghost investigations, Debra, have you come across spirits of children in particular? And are they different? Do they communicate in a different way than adult ghosts?
Well, the high ginger EVP that you have, that's a child. And then that private investigation where that was captured, their complaint was there was a young girl running up and down the halls at night that would wake them up and get their dog riled up. And they didn't have a young girl in the family. And the EVP we got, was a young child. And then I have another EVP. You don't have this one. It's not technically an EVP. It actually came through our mics. We were at the end of an investigation. It was like 3:30 in the morning. We were out in the middle of nowhere. There was probably not another house for at least a good 2 or 3 miles. And it was south of Indy. And we had gathered up our walkie-talkies. We had 6 walkie-talkies, and we had them on the kitchen table, and we had them shut off. And one of them came back on, and the mic kept keying, and we could hear a child's voice. And I said, how does this, I thought we turned this off. And she said, no, maybe we just changed it to a channel instead of turning it off. And then I went to pick the mic up. One of the investigators, she keyed the mic and said, say again, because it sounded far away. And she set the mic back down. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, you heard the mic key again, and you heard this little girl's voice say, hi, everybody. I mean, just clear as day. And it's like, okay, this really wasn't technically an EVP. The microphone was supposedly all the mics had, all the walkie-talkies had been shut off. And, I think they were like little cheap Midlands and maybe had a 1 or 2 mile range, maybe. But it was in the dead of night, and there wasn't very many houses that would be close. So it just made no sense. And this child just keys up out of nowhere and says, hi, everybody. And I mean, it was just like somebody talking on a mic, which I thought was exciting to me because I couldn't figure it out. Skepticism is good and healthy. And when I went into in any investigation, my goal was to explain what was going on and, help these people we figure out. And most of the time we could find some prosaic explanation for something. But it's those few times that you can't that always got me excited and kept me pulled along,
Yeah. Well, let's play the EVP that we were just talking about right now.
Okay.
I mean, that's clear as a bell.
And I have the video. I found it from our camera because we had a camera in the room as well. And the thing was, that voice came as the dog walked past the other recording device that was sitting on the table, and the dog's name was Ginger. And so the only people in the house at the time was the dog. the homeowners had left. They went out to dinner. We had set our base station up, our main station up in the garage, and then had run our cameras through the house. And I had my recorder set in that living room, dining room, family room area. And as the dog, and you can see it on the video, as the dog walks past and walks past the recorder at the edge of the table and then lays down on the floor. At the same time, and the camera's recording, the timestamps are linked up. And that's when we recorded the EVP of the little girl's voice saying, "Hi, Ginger." The dog's name was Ginger. And the people's complaint was that there was a little girl that would run up and down the stairs and up and down the hallway and wake everybody up. So everything was matching, it was just bizarre and exciting and awesome. That's the kind of stuff I lived for.
That's actually a Class A EVP.
Yeah, that's definitely a Class A EVP. And, the validation between the homeowner saying they think there's a little girl running around. Okay, that EVP being Class A was what I was explaining to Jeremy, that you can tell it's female. You can tell it's a young child, probably, 5 to 7, but you can hear it in the voice. You can hear the emotion in her voice about her being happy that she can see the dog. But that also tells you that she can see the dog, which is why we went down the EVP road so heavily and then into ITC, because there's that whole range of information you get before you even get to what they replied. In this case, "Hi, Ginger," because she saw the dog.
And she knew the dog's name was Ginger.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, which means this child was observing, listening, able to hear and be aware. That's extraordinary. Okay, so we'll continue on with extraordinary evidence and more EVP on the other side of this break. You're listening to Paranormal Now on the Paranormal Pop YouTube channel. I'm Alan B. Smith, your grateful host. We'll be right back on the Inverted Upside Down.
Tell me why, with 12 sides, the odds are that we die, roll the die. As you hide, I can't find you on the other side of the line.
This coffee is delicious. Is that a UFO? I'm actually seeing a UFO. This coffee is awesome. That's why they call it alien coffee bean. Is this even made on Earth? Hey all. Paranormal Now will be syndicated on the UnX network, the new mainstream, where you can find your favorite hosts and shows on the cutting edge of ufological and paranormal news and topics. Listen for Paranormal Now rebroadcast on the X at 2 a.m. EST Fridays, 11 p.m. PST Thursdays at unxnetwork.com.
On and again, the signs keep on coming, they point to the end, but I hold on so tight.
Welcome back to Paranormal Now. This is Alan B. Smith. Thank you for joining us, and thank you to Lourdes, Charles, Android, Barbara for joining me. I appreciate all your comments. I'm there. We're watching. And to everyone else listening on the podcast live or otherwise later, thank you so much for joining us. We have a roundtable of special guests, all participants and crew of the documentary Sounds of the Dead, EVP. So Jeremy, as the director of the film, I want to go back to you real quick. Now, what is your understanding? What's your takeaway of what the cause of EVPs are, as someone coming into it, as a sort of an outside observer?
Okay, so I definitely seen EVPs in some of these ghost shows, right? And on the ghost shows, they're telling you that and I didn't realize there was such a thing as a ghost box at first. There was I was very naive in the whole world at first. So I've seen EVPs on the ghost shows, and then I've also explored debunking the EVPs. And the debunking things that they would say, they can't be recorded with anything. They have to be recorded with certain kinds of equipment. And that turned out to not be true, I think. We established that a variety of different equipment can record them. And then the ghost box thing was totally new to me, that these could be like reproduced live in some sort of a fashion, which I thought, wow, that's an ideal situation. It's so difficult as an investigator, I would imagine, walking into a room, saying a bunch of random questions, and then going back and hearing, they responded to something, and then like feeling, I want to ask another question, but you can't now because the time has passed, right? So it's got to be really difficult. With the ghost box, and like you can hear it right away, then you can like get going, maybe even have like follow-up, and imagine that you're in a situation where they're responding to these follow-up questions. It's like a conversation. This is the kind of evidence you want as an investigator, right?
Right.
So
yeah,
I find it all really fascinating. I think that of course some of it is going to be mistaken. It's going to be explainable in some other kind of way. I think that's just how math works, right? But some of it is unexplainable, and I love that. And I want to follow up and find more about those kind of things. And I think that's what happens to the investigator people, is that they have an experience, right? They get a little bit of evidence and they are hooked, and they want to just continue to get more and more evidence, and it becomes like this whole other thing. It's really fascinating to see how that seems to be kind of a common theme with a lot of the people, is a personal experience, and then like almost like a passionate drive that comes from that.
Yeah. Hey, Jeremy, any chance you have headphones or iPod buds to plug into the computer? We're just getting some feedback.
Oh, yes. Sorry about that. I have some.
No worries.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. That'd be great. So, Tony, what do you think about that?
Yeah, well, he's absolutely correct about the part about that. Once you're hooked, it just develops into extreme passion and wanting to know more. For every answer that is received, and answers don't come easily, but for every answer you do get, there's 100, 200, 500 questions that appear from whatever answer you got. So it's a never-ending challenge to keep trying to get answers. But you asked the question to Jeremy about what he thinks EVPs are and how that happens. Well, the thing about anything paranormal is that there has to be a consciousness involved. If you're asking a question and you're receiving an answer, that is coming from a consciousness, whether that's a bodied consciousness or an unbodied consciousness or a multi-dimensional consciousness or even an extraterrestrial consciousness. The fact of the matter is we don't know at all times who's responding. We can ask, we can try to get them to identify who they are, and we've had that happen, but you don't always know. And if you start to take a look at locations that are well known for paranormal activity, the Conjuring House, what's the ranch?
Skinwalker
Skinwalker Ranch. There is considerable crossover between paranormal, ghosts, spirits, and extraterrestrial activity. I know I've heard Andrea say many, many times that ghosts were not the only thing they ran into when they lived at the farmhouse. Extraterrestrial activity was all over. So then you got to decide if you're seeing an apparition, is that, or you're hearing voices, is that truly paranormal on the spirit side, or could that be extraterrestrial, multidimensional? If you look at the way people who have experienced extraterrestrials and say, well, he was speaking to me, I could hear every word he said, but his mouth never moved. Well, is that a form of consciousness that we're not aware of how it works, and that's how they're communicating? So the overlap between them, those pieces start to fit together, and without consciousness, there would be no term of paranormal, because that's what we don't know. That's what we don't understand how it works.
And as an investigator for MUFON for 10 years, I saw, and my own personal paranormal experience and my own personal UFO experience, and then becoming an investigator for MUFON, many cases I went to, I saw that overlap. I saw these witnesses who were also experiencing paranormal activity. And I began to, put together that, hey, there's a connection somewhere. I'm not quite sure what it is yet, but it's something. It's there. And that was a driving force for me to get connected to a paranormal group. And then I kind of brought the paranormal group and the MUFON group together, and they actually worked on a few cases together, which was pretty cool. But you're right, exactly right about that.
Yeah. So we'll play some of these files that you had sent me, Tony, of EVPs. And I'd like to get your reaction, Jeremy, as someone who's looked into this seriously, but still has that healthy skeptical streak. Actually, I'd like to hear everybody's response. So here we go. This one is called Not the Baby.
I don't think you shared the audio, Alan.
You're not hearing the audio?
No.
No, I was just silent for you guys. Okay. So you were listening really hard.
We were like, okay.
That's how ghostly that EVP was. Okay. Well, so everybody listening, I am working on a new computer system. So that is explaining or excusing my technical challenges tonight. So I do apologize for that. So why don't you at least tell us, Tony, what that is, the Not the Baby. Was that a spirit box or was that an EVP? And
no, that is straight EVP. Nothing but a digital recorder. This was actually captured at the Diplomat Hotel in Baguio City, Philippines. Cherie and I got access to do an overnight investigation in the Diplomat Hotel, and what we were able to capture there was just off the charts. In that EVP, I think Cherie asks 3 or 4 questions. Every answer follows with timing and relevancy to the questioning. And we could hear them speak with our own ears in that location. It was off the charts.
Yeah. So, Debbie, have you had an experience that just completely blew your mind off the charts? Besides, High Ginger, I mean, was there anything that was like, holy cow, unexpected?
Well, a lot of our stuff, or all of our stuff, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. This was back in the day before the spirit box, so we didn't hear things on, we couldn't hear it until after we went back and reviewed, 10 hours or 20 hours of audio tape. But there was one time that we did a private residence and we had K2 meters, and we had a couple of them sitting on the bed, and there were 4 of us sitting around, and we were recording. We didn't capture any EVPs on our recorders, but we had what felt like a conversation with something. And every time we asked it, to respond by lighting up the lights lit up. And we did videotape this so you could see the lights on the K2 meters go, peg up to the red. We tried to ask yes or no questions with yes, make the light come on or make the light go off. And that was kind of exciting to me because it felt like we were making a connection and communicating directly with something. It was manipulating the K2 meter to do. And also one time I was at an old hotel in Atlanta, Indiana, and we had a flashlight laying on the floor. And several times one of our guys asked him to turn the flashlight on, and the flashlight came on. And that was exciting to me. And that was videotape. They recorded it video, but to me, that was exciting. Though mostly the feeling like I was actually communicating with something real time, that got me excited.
Right. How often does that happen? Actually communicating in real time?
That didn't happen very often for us. I can only think of that happening maybe twice in all the time that I went on investigations.
Because that seems to me that's incontrovertible evidence, right? If you're having a conversation, I mean, statistically, what would be the odds of picking up some random communication, electromagnetic communication that is in sync in conversationally with the questions you're asking?
Yeah, like maybe twice in 6 years, not very often.
Hey, Jeremy, I have a question for you.
Sure.
While you guys were recording the interviews, did you ever take the time to review the footage and just see if you pick up any EVPs yourself by accident?
Not really. I mean, we listened to it. Jason, my partner, is a stickler for sound. So if there's anything bad sound-wise that was glaring, he would notice that right away. So we didn't have anything that was like, really noticeable. But I have heard stuff. So my friend has an app that's for like recording her sleep patterns, like her breathing while she's sleeping. And just like a couple weeks ago or so, she writes this message. She's freaking out. Her app on her phone has recorded, I think what you would call a class A sound, and it says "help me," and it is unmistakable. You can hear it. Wow. It sounds like a male, and it's weird, right? Like, and this is just like an app on her phone, right?
Yeah,
it's nothing fancy. That
Is she sensitive to this sort of thing, or
maybe? I mean, it freaked her out. So she definitely believes there's something sort of spirit in her like apartment now, which is it's not a good thing for her. She's like, and it said "help me," right, which is concerning. So
that is, because you don't know how desperate they are. Cherie, in your experience, when ghosts are reaching out, I mean, we've heard this before on EVPs. Help me. Do they really need help with crossing over, or is it something else?
Actually, every time we do an EVP session, we hear that EVP voice "help me" constant all the time. So we don't really know. I don't really know whether they really need help or, but we try to communicate. How can we help you? We're hoping if, they will answer like what kind of help they need. But yeah, we always get that, but I'm not sure what kind of help they need though.
Well, it depends too. And we probably picked up on this first 3 years we were doing this, but sometimes they're not talking to you.
Exactly.
Sometimes they're talking to each other and you're only picking up a portion of the conversation. Then you can take an effect that, sometimes if you're looking at dimensional or time overlaps, you can be the ghost in their world.
Exactly.
And their "help me" or "get out" may not be directed to you as you investigating a location, but that you've somehow appeared in their world and you're freaking them out, and they're just like, get out,
Yeah.
not the other way around. So because we've experienced this over and over and over, we've noticed that. And so the first question is, who are they speaking to? Are they speaking to you? Are they communicating with each other? And what's that context of that dialogue? So there's so many more variables involved than just saying, because they said, help me. You know, maybe they're saying help me because you overlap their time frame. They don't know what you are, and they're just like, help me. What is this? You know, there's so many variables involved that you can't just barrel it down to them saying, oh my gosh, they're looking for help. You know, everything in life, at least on the 3D world, has a pattern to it. Water evaporates, condenses in the clouds, refalls to, you know, a flower blooms, creates a seed, dies, the seed falls, a new plant grows. You're telling me that as a spirit, you can just get lost and you need help? To me, that doesn't make any sense. Now that's only my personal opinion from 12 years of research, but that doesn't make any sense. We as human beings right now have free will. If we take our memories, take our thoughts, take our ability to think and be cognitive, you're going to take that free will with you as well. And that means you can come and go wherever you want. So
I have a theory, Alan.
Please, yeah.
So this goes back to the child reincarnation story. So one of the things that the children all talk about, and when they're talking about it, they're not talking about like, oh, they were another child. These are usually like adults that have died in some sort of tragic way. And like the parents will talk about the kids like freaking out in their sleep and saying stuff like, I need to get out, like they're in a burning building or something. And it seems like, and this is very disturbing, it seems like they are still present with whatever had happened. So like, even though time is 14 years have passed, right? This person has died 14 years later. Now they're this child. The child is still freaking out about the thing that happened 14 years ago to this person. So was this person in this state of freaking out for 14 years in some sort of way somewhere, you know, like, and is time what we think time is, right? Or could it just be immediate for them? Like no time has passed. They're immediately now right there with this child, or are they not aware of, you know, this whole time that they're in the dream state or wherever we're able to, you know, like, and there's so many possibilities. But the thing that's interesting is how it always seems to be some sort of a tragedy. And so I think this could be a mistake, you know, like the reason that we're even able to have these EVP things might be because it's not following the typical pattern that a normal person would go through, that you die, your soul or whatever goes in this process. It goes through the thing, normal status, you know?
The thing.
Yeah. Whatever happens.
Whatever that is, we don't know,
you know?
right?
And it goes the way it goes. But these other situations are like murders, or, you know, they've died in a fire, or like a plane crash. I remember one of the kids is like, I can vividly remember the plane crash. Like it's terrifying.
Yeah.
And they don't talk about being in heaven or hell or anywhere, which is also kind of, you know, upsetting in a way, right? But I think that the tragedy factor is one of the reasons that you might see this help me thing, or these spirits being in a state of distress a lot of times.
Yeah. There's a lot that goes into play. And I think this is why, for me, paranormal investigation is eternally fascinating, because there are those, I suppose, that just go out there knocking on doors and looking for ghosts, you know, just to get something on video and share it online. But I think, like, for everybody here and people listening, it goes so much deeper. Like this idea that maybe our reality is bleeding into someone else's reality begs a whole series of questions. My wife and I were just at a lecture with a Lakota member, and I'd asked him something about paranormal, and he had mentioned Bigfoot, and he's saying that people are chasing Bigfoot, but Bigfoot for them is a spirit. It's not this physical being. Bigfoot is a spirit, and I have noticed, and Jeremy, I know you know from doing the Aliens versus Bigfoot documentary, that a large portion of the Bigfoot investigator community is leaning into this whole metaphysical, interdimensional aspect of Bigfoot. And so then from there, I take this leap to like, and Rick McCallum, who's also in the documentary, I interviewed him last week. We're talking about interdimensionality and all this kind of stuff, and I think that, like, what if we are sort of in purgatory? Like, what if we're like in this in between world, which we think is like the mainstream reality, but in fact we're like in lane B to lane A, and we're A number one trying to figure out the rest of the universe. Meanwhile, there's others looking in at us like, oh gosh, these guys, they got a long way to go.
I've heard it all as far as the Bigfoot stuff goes. But the mainstream is definitely starting to adopt this Bigfoot being an interdimensional type of thing. And that used to be fringe, right? Like, oh, only the wackos think that. And now it seems to be a lot of them are starting to accept that this could be a thing. And I've heard a lot about it. And to me, like, I could see it being like a cloaking thing, like an octopus type thing. If you've ever seen an octopus do that cloaking thing, it looks like something out of another world, right? So maybe it's something like that. Maybe they're able to like cloak in some sort of way. I don't know about this interdimensional thing. I'm skeptical still about Bigfoot being an interdimensional thing.
Okay.
But it's fascinating. If I saw Bigfoot dematerialize in front of my eyes, like a lot of these people say, I would be an instantaneous believer, Well,
let me ask you this. Do you understand the nature of reality?
I think that I do.
Really?
I've lived a crazy life. So
yeah, what do you think it is? Because I know you've experienced.
You don't want to hear, like, so part of me studying this stuff is because I want to find something that gives me hope, because I'm fairly hopeless. I have a couple other documentaries that are about psychedelics. I've had a lot of time hallucinating. I don't think a lot of these other people that do all these things have had those experiences. And when you see what's possible from that, and like how real some of these experiences can be, and then that they're for sure not real. I've had some of those experiences, and they're very disheartening and make you kind of feel like, oh no, I think a lot of these things are some sort of a function of the brain in some sort of a way, and that we probably don't live on after our brain dies. And that like the way I like to describe it is life is pointless, and there's no meaning to it all.
But yet you just said that you're looking for hope.
Yes, and the thing that gives me the absolute most hope is the child reincarnation stories, and some of these other things, like some of the EVPs with communication, and I'm really even the UFO stuff, like some of that stuff is amazing, and I love to think that there could be more to this world than there is.
Sure. Yeah. We have a comment from Alper. All you have is what you want to do in your next move, small or big. You jump time. I think that's actually quite profound.
I had a near-death experience when I gave birth to my first son. Before that, I kind of questioned things a lot more than I do now. But and it wasn't your typical near-death experience where I didn't see a ton of light and Jesus and angels and all that stuff. But I I was in the operating room theater and I felt myself being cut open, and I couldn't tell them that I could feel it because I was paralyzed. I could, my consciousness was aware, but my body was paralyzed. I'm supposing it was probably some drug they gave me. But I heard them talking about sailboats at Geist Reservoir in the operating theater in the beginning. And then all of a sudden their voices started to go farther and farther away, and it started sounding like they were in another room. And then all of a sudden I felt this disconnect like that. And I felt like I disconnected from my body, and I was now trapped in this black box, and I could feel this black box, these walls around me. And I started to panic because I needed to tell them I wasn't dead and I needed to get out. And I was pounding on this black box. And then all of a sudden, I heard a voice that said, "You can't leave. Your baby was just born." And at that instant when I heard, and I think in retrospect, that was probably a nurse whispering in my ear. And when she said, "Your baby was just born," I realized when I disconnected, I forgot about this entire life that I was trying to leave. I forgot that I had just had a baby. I forgot everything. I just wanted out. I just wanted out of this box because I wasn't dead. But when she said that, I went, "Oh, my baby." I did just have, and I locked right back in. It was like another woof. And when I did, all of the sounds started getting louder. And then there started being a lot of yelling and chaos. And then I felt something around my legs, and I felt a shock. And then later I found out that my heart had stopped twice during the delivery. That was when I think that punch was when I was being, hit with the paddles or whatever they say. Yeah. But I connected back into my body. But that moment that I disconnected, I was still me, and I was still aware of me. Although I was now trapped. But my main thing was I forgot that whole life. I was just trying to leave. Forgot everything. Forgot my family and my husband. I forgot the new baby I just birthed. So after this was all over with, it changed my perspective and my thoughts 100,000% about death. And when I was younger, I was more like you, and now it's different. I don't wish you to have a near-death experience in order to change it, but I can tell you mine.
I've done DMT and salvia. I've had those experiences that you just described.
I think all that only helps to confirm the existence of a state of consciousness beyond what is just here, right, in this casing. But Jeremy, we'll try to help you get a little more wise on the other side of this break. This is Alan B. Smith for Paranormal Now on the Paranormal Pop YouTube channel. We'll see you on the flip side. This coffee is delicious. Is that a UFO? I'm actually seeing a UFO. This coffee is awesome. That's why they call it alien coffee bean. Is this even made on Earth? Hey y'all. Paranormal Now will be syndicated on the UnX network, the new mainstream, where you can find your favorite hosts and shows on the cutting edge of ufological and paranormal news and topics. Listen for Paranormal Now rebroadcast on the X at 2 a.m. EST Fridays, 11 p.m. PST Thursdays at unxnetwork.com. Welcome back to Paranormal Now. This is Alan B. Smith. You're listening live on the Paranormal Pop YouTube channel. This show and all Paranormal Now shows will be rebroadcast, syndicated on the KUNX network at 2 a.m. now. So if you missed it tonight, later tonight, Friday morning, 2 a.m., you can always catch the show in replay. Tony and Cherie, you have your own show. Can you tell us about Paranormal Entity Voices?
Yeah, we run a show Monday nights called Entity Voices Paranormal Evidence, and it's been a ton of fun because we not only review evidence captured by our own team, Entity Voices, but from paranormal investigators across the country, and have really gotten to see some amazing evidence. But the other cool part about it is you get to see consistencies in evidence captured, whether that be through EVP, ITC, shadow figures, photographs with apparitions. And, you know, even though science says that, you know, unless you can bring it into a lab and reproduce it 3 times, 3 sets in a row, we can't consider it scientific evidence. Well, you can if you look at it from the overall perspective of what's being captured. I mean, science can't bring a planet into the lab either, but clearly they can look up into space through a telescope and exist. So, you know, science is great for the 3D world, but the things within the paranormal don't fall within the 3D world or the reasons why and how the 3D world operates. So, you know, hundreds of years ago, a lunar eclipse was completely paranormal, but today science can explain how that happens, and it's not considered paranormal anymore. So hopefully at some point science will catch up.
Yeah, it can go both ways, can't it? Paranormal becomes normal and science, and then you know, science can catch the paranormal and say and validate it as reality, and it really is as weird as we think it is. Jeremy, we have a question from Android. Jeremy, Newton's law says energy cannot be created or destroyed. It only changes form. The nerves in our brain full of energy firing off energy. What happens to that energy after death?
Okay, so I believe the energy continues on. Absolutely. But I don't care if the energy continues on. What I care about is my memories and me, this life that I am leading. Does this continue on? And so, like, in the children, they're like, have these memories of this previous life. It's this wonderful thing where you're like, oh, maybe somehow I do carry on. But even that is ultimately a super downer because they forget the memories as they live on. And then as they're adults, they can't remember anything. And so my whole life is going to be gone no matter what, basically. And I'm very happy that the energy lives on and whatever. But like, what I'm mostly concerned about is like this personality and this thing that I have kind of identified as me. Does that continue on in some sort of a way where I'm like conscious of it, you know, and able to make decisions or think back on like things that were good, or like benefit from the lessons that I supposedly learned doing this life that it has some sort of a point, like you know, like all this stuff, and there's little bits of things where it seems like maybe there's something more to this. Maybe like we transverse dimensions, and you know, like there's a million possibilities. Nobody knows, but this, I feel like, is the most important topic of life, and you know, it's not being investigated as much as I would like to see. So I want to support the people doing that, and give them more of a platform and more exposure on the work they're doing, and then selfishly, I want to kind of find out. Like, I'm not going to dedicate 30 years of my life to studying each and every single thing, but as a filmmaker, I can kind of find out where they're at with it, and you know, it's a wonderful thing.
There you go.
you can shine a light on it. You know, that's great. And Deborah, you have a new book coming out. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, it came out in August.
Came out. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a document. It's like my journals printed out about just the weird life that I've had and the strange things that have happened. The original Intruders story is in there as told by, first person, and then just how things have changed over the last 38 years, since June 30, 83 incident. It's called Extraordinary Contact: Life Beyond Intruders.
Yep. And you've had experience then with extraterrestrials, with disembodied spirits. I think that, as we were saying earlier, when you have, Jeremy, like you said, when you have an experience, it kind of, stirs this hunger of the need to know, like, why is this happening to me? What is this thing? Because, if science could 100% explain away all of this phenomena, we probably wouldn't be sitting here talking about it. There's holes in the explanations.
I think that's for sure. There's definitely more to it.
Right. Okay.
The personal experiences are so profound. This is, I can always tell people that have not hallucinated a lot or had maybe one or two experiences like that, because people don't really know what that can be like. Like, sometimes you're aware of yourself when you're hallucinating. You're like, oh, I'm seeing this bottle and it's like doing something. But sometimes you're not. Sometimes the whole experience is this whole other thing. Like, her story sounds exactly like doing DMT to me.
But I never did that.
But it's in your brain, and your brain can do all kinds of things, and especially in some sort of a traumatic accident or something. Like, this is usually when things like that happen. And it's like, I've had experiences that were profound when you were doing those things, and it changed your whole life. I've seen people stop smoking cigarettes and all kinds of amazing things, and that's a really wonderful thing. And whether whatever it is, I think that that we as humans are just trying to survive, and we're trying to do the best we can, right? And that's what this is all about,
I think that there is a liminal element that kind of like the substrate that binds this together, the more mystical, fantastical experiences we hear in folklore and psychedelic, and then the experiences that Debra and other experiencers have with alien entities and often repeat visitations. Because, on the one hand, I don't, I've heard stories of people seeing UFOs and creatures on psychedelics, but not so linear and not so directly paralleling extraterrestrial abduction stories, because those are often quite literal in their explanation as to what happened, right? It's like, this is what the being looks like, this is where it took us, it communicated to us, it said that it had this message. There's sort of like a beginning and a middle and an end. Whereas my understanding, and Jeremy, maybe I'm wrong, is that most psychedelic experiences tend to be much more abstract.
Well, there can be a variety, and a lot of it is dosage dependent. So like salvia is a lot of times like what you described, where there's a story of like, I lived my whole life as a link on a fence, and they can kind of describe this whole story of what that was. And time wasn't, it's like years to them, but it's been minutes. And another thing, though, along the lines of what you guys are talking about, some people think that just being in the psychedelic state of mind makes you somehow more able to communicate with these entities or, other UFOs or aliens or whatever, the case may be. That something to do with being in that state of mind makes you able to like transverse in some sort of way. And when you've done those things, you feel like that's possible. You you do feel those things that you're able to like, you know.
Well, the experience I had on June 30th, 83, it left a burn mark in the yard that lasted 2 years, and snow melted off of it. And we had 2 independent witnesses who saw the flash in the yard and their houses shook. And then I had the burn marks in my eyes. I lost my, I got diagnosed with cataracts and macular degeneration in my 30s, which I blame on that night because I got hit in the chest with this bright ball of light that, and, you know, so there were things that happened physically, like the mark in the yard. There were other people involved. So, you know, it would be easy to just mark off my memories to something in my mind, but I had physical after effects, physical marks in the yard, and other witnesses. So sometimes these things, and I'm not the only person, there's lots of people who've had experiences like mine who have all these extra things that you just can't write off to some kind of psychedelic experience.
Yeah, I've also had shared hallucinations where me and someone else hallucinated the same thing.
But did it leave a mark in the yard?
No, I love the physical.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff that you want. You want to have more and more evidence like that leaves something. Of course, that could be anything also. You know?
I mean, we've tried for 40 years to figure out what it was. I could find a ton of people who could tell me what it wasn't.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's true. That's what we're all looking for in all these paranormal the categories. The same thing with investigating ghosts is the more corroboration that you have, the more circumstantial evidence to support what you've witnessed or experienced, the stronger the case, at least to the outward world, which is not to devalue the individual lone experience, because I've had that kind of thing, right? Where I was by myself, I saw something, I don't know really what it was, and there was nobody else there to corroborate it. So for me, it's still a mystery. But when you have cases like Debra's, or these EVPs where they're conversational, and you have other people that can hear something and validate it, and you've got a recording, this is the good stuff. Yeah.
That's what you want. That's all that kind of stuff is more and more evidence towards something is happening. And I want to know what is happening. You know,
Me too.
I don't want to just have a bunch of like anecdotal stuff. You know, where it's
Jeremy,
like,
you sound really frustrated.
it's really frustrating because
Welcome to my world.
Especially you guys, imagine like they're able to like communicate with you through other dimensions, and they're just saying like, oh, the wall is brown or whatever. Like we're trying to figure out what the hell is happening here, and it's so hard to get a conversation or to get some sort of like first and last name or historical evidence that you can like repeat, or like, I mean, even just any sort of answer from them, like where are you? Like, I wish it were easier. I wish it was the way that we want it to be, where you just ask them and then they tell you. And you know,
I do have an EVP of a woman. She, one of our clients asked during an EVP session, "Uncle George, are you here?" And we got an EVP, a pretty clear one of him that said, "Well, I'm right here in this chair." And they ID'd the voice as his. Yeah. Oh my God, that, you know.
And then if they can do that sometimes, then what the hell?
Yeah.
Why can't they do this all the time?
But that's the whole
frustrating.
point. But that's what Tony often brings up, is that these are if they are sentient beings, they have free will to some, or we think, right?
Yeah,
so they don't have to come. They don't have to reoccur whenever you want them to. And also, we don't know how they're doing it. I mean, it's like when Tesla was first experimenting with electricity, right? Like, it's like playing around. I don't know how this is going to work until he finally figured it out. Alternating current.
Yeah.
There might be a trial and error on the other side for them. Like the
aliens aren't allowed to tell us that we're like, all this stuff. There's a similar theme. How the entities also are not allowed to tell us because it's some sort of mystical thing, and maybe that's true. It's super frustrating as somebody that wants to know.
Yeah, well, if you take the Travis Walton case, right? I mean, I too, Jeremy, have had a psychic connection with somebody on a hallucinogen, right? Where you're literally like reading each other's mind, and it's crazy. How is this happening right now? But it did. And
our minds are capable of far more than we know. Also,
yes,
I believe that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But my point there is, just because that happened, then it doesn't mean that any kind of other strange experience when you're not on a hallucinogen is caused by your body releasing DMT, because in like the Travis Walton case, you have 6 people, and not all 6 could possibly be hallucinating at the same time.
No,
like it's just
the
way.
hallucinating thing is, I think, a large majority of a lot of especially near-death experiences, like those are almost all hallucinations in my opinion, but some of these other things are not, and there might be some sort of brain thing going on here that is something else, but I have no idea. I loved your idea that somehow we are manifesting these voices in some sort of a way, and that it's us talking to ourselves. That seems not out of the realm of possibility to me. Our brains are absolutely unbelievable, and I think they're capable of doing a lot more than we really know.
Well, that makes perfect sense, Jeremy. And if you go with the concept that EVPs, that you're dealing with an external consciousness that's answering, because we've had them say names, answer questions that we had never told anybody and got the right answer. Now, what then is inside of this meat suit? Well, it's spirit or consciousness or whatever term you want to call it. But then why isn't it possible for us to do the same thing they're doing even while here on Earth? Technically, the capability is still there. Whether that be communicating through a spirit box with your own thoughts or communicating with somebody else somewhere else on the planet, technically, if consciousness is conscious and universal across any being, then that absolutely would be possible.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I every night we lose consciousness and we go into a hallucination, and our brains are like good at that. And
Sure.
I wonder what else can they do?
Well, the one thing the brain can't do is figure it out. And that's literally what the answers we're trying to ask. I mean, that literally is the concept.
And
I
wonder also so maybe sometimes we're manifesting it, but maybe sometimes we are communicating with something, and there's probably no one answer to all of this.
Right.
Yeah.
But maybe the sages have figured it out. I mean, maybe the Dalai Lama has figured it out. Maybe those who have the time to actually dedicate hours and hours a day towards meditation and trying to reach that state of enlightenment without the use of a psychedelic, right? Like what they've been telling us for thousands of years is pretty much the truth, that there is life elsewhere out there. It does continue in consciousness. We're running around with cameras and doing this, and they're like, we got the answer, guys. I don't know what you're doing.
Some of those shaman people and Buddhist monk people can do unbelievable physical things, change the heat in their hands, like have a different like amazing things. So like, who knows what's possible with a large amount of time and dedication.
We don't
Totally.
know.
I think you're right, Cherie, that some people just are naturally gifted for whatever reason, and they can just tap into that. Yeah. It's like when they choose the new Dalai Lama, right? The reincarnated Buddha. They are on the search for a child, right? And then they find a candidate or candidates, and then they put this child in a room and by themselves with items around them. And if that child chooses the items that previously belonged, to the previous, Buddha or incarnation thereof, then that's what you were talking about earlier, Jeremy, right? That's incontrovertible evidence. Like, for a child who's never seen these items before to reach out and say, that's mine, that's mine, that's mine, and get it right out of a multitude of choices.
Yeah, there's a story that I recently saw where the child is like leading people in their faith to their seats where they're supposed to sit, because he knows them from being the previous monk leader or whatever it was. Yeah, it's fascinating. And the children thing, they say, and they're so matter of fact about it. They're like, oh yeah, I was Joe Smith. I lived in Newbury Park. My other mom had real pretty hair, and like it's just a thing to them. And then watching the footage of this guy like showing this one child the pictures, and it's like one picture is somebody else and one picture is the person they have referenced, and they just immediately know the person. They're like, and then you can see their eyes light up and be like, oh, that's this person. Oh yeah, that's the park that I would go to. And like, so something is happening here. Like, what the hell is happening?
Right. Well, it begs the question, all of this of, what is reality anyway? My wife and I were just talking about this too. Like, and the Matrix covers this really well. If I, have an intention to do something, or not do something, but you interpret it the wrong way, or I mislead you, but I know what I'm going to do. That's reality for me. I know what I'm going to do, right? But you think I'm going to do something else. That's reality for you. So which reality is true?
Well, I suppose both realities are true in your mind until the physical reality happens of you do whatever it is that you are going to or not going to do. And then that leads into quantum physics, right? So then that's like, how many realities are there, right? And then like, is this an infinite reality theory where everything that could possibly happen somewhere?
Yeah,
I mean, that's kind of where science is going right now, right? Which is like, when you look at quantum physics, some of the stuff in that is unbelievable. Like, time isn't real, like all this stuff. And this is like mainstream science, right?
Right.
So, I mean,
but Aaron Tyson in the comments, Aaron says both realities are true. If that's the case, then there's like billions of reality going on right now.
Some people think there's a certain number, which is interesting.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I think it was like 37 or something. Like, it was like, oh, okay, this is very specific. And people just have a lot of ways of interpreting certain things. Like, the math that they're doing is like, it's unbelievable. If you've ever watched any of the documentaries about them doing like quantum physics and like some figuring out things, like how to make the integrated circuit, which is a physical thing that exists, and it exists on quantum physics, and it works. So like, it's just a really strange thing that there could be multiple realities, and in that sense, like, maybe we're communicating with other things that are in some sort of a reality, right? Like, it's fascinating stuff.
It's fascinating and also frustrating.
Yes,
it is, because we don't know the variables that determine when, if, and how it happens.
Right.
And so out of all the hobbies, or whatever you want to call what we do, it's probably one of the toughest ones, because we don't know the variables that exist on the other side. We don't know how to manipulate them. We don't know how to make anything happen. We can't make anything happen. It happens when it wants. We got to hopefully be there to catch it, record it, audio tape, whatever and then be able to at least say, okay, here's what occurred. But and then today with technology, whether it be, being able to alter audio, alter video, I mean, you can show the best evidence ever, and somebody's going to say, well, I think you used CGI, or I think you did this. So it's definitely, it's a challenge. No doubt about it.
But that is provable, because you can have the raw file. You can, upload a raw file,
right,
onto a and some people can download it and take a look at it and be like, that's
True.
it. Like, you know, and a lot of the community does do that, you know, especially in the UFO community. Someone captures something on video, particularly, you know, you can look at the raw file and decide for yourself whether it's fake or you can actually analyze it and break down. Yeah. Cherie and Tony, what do you have spiritual or religious beliefs?
Yeah.
I do in my, you know, because I'm from the Philippines, so I was born and raised Catholic. So my mom has very religious beliefs that there's so many, and I sometimes I tell Tony, he's like, "What are you talking about?" I said that we have feng shui, we have so many things.
Well, that's because of terminology. I don't know what those terms are. But, you know, when she starts getting into terms of what they call ghosts or entities in the Philippines, and it turns out to be some woman that can separate her lower body from her upper body, has fang teeth, and I'm like, okay, this sounded like some sort of weird vampire, but that's a little different than what we're investigating.
Yeah.
So wait, is that a skeptical streak, Tony? Did I hear it?
Yeah, it is.
When I was young, I really truly believe on that.
Yeah, doesn't this thing like separate, sprout wings, fly up in the air, and suck babies out of belly buttons?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, a little skepticism there.
I mean, yeah, Catholicism. Tony, were you raised Catholic?
No, I was UCC, which is, you know, Christian but not Catholic.
Okay.
Went through the whole 9 yards for, oh my gosh, since I was probably 5 to, I don't know, 15, 16. So yeah, I have a very strong religious background. Yeah. You know, in investigating the paranormal, there's so many things that occur within the paranormal that do fit the religious teachings. There's ones also that don't, but the fact is, like I said before, we don't have all the answers, and we don't know the variables, and until we do, and that's part of the problem with science, is that there's no money made from it. And we could probably have, now science has made great leaps, don't get me wrong, and whether that's in physics or psychology or, you know, any of the other sciences, there's been great advancements. You know, science even says today, we believe that consciousness survives death. That's been put out for the last couple of years, and there's so many other things depending on which science you're looking at. But you know, let's face it, if there was money to be made for it, people would be paying scientists to get more information. But that unfortunately is one of the problems, because you know, there's no money to be made for it, therefore it's not a priority, even though it's probably a question every individual worldwide wants to know and asks.
Yeah, I think the only way to really make money right now is through like documentary series and entertainment. Like I'm thinking Skinwalker Ranch, and I forget his name, Travis. Does anyone know his last name?
Well,
no, the physicist, isn't it? Isn't it Travis?
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, but you have an actual, I think he's a physicist or astrophysicist, something like that. But he's an actual scientist.
The billionaire guy that owned it.
That's Bob Bigelow.
Yeah, that's Bigelow. Yeah,
Bigelow did own it, but there's now a university professor on the series Skinwalker Ranch, and he, you know, is there. He's also in Ancient Aliens and that sort of thing. But you know, that's the only way it seems that you can like get scientists involved is by
Travis Taylor.
Thank you.
That's it.
Yeah. So there is a way, but then you're kind of stuck to the production company and what value they expect of you.
I mean, I'll tell you, like, from that perspective, they want you to hype these things that, like, even that show, you can see what they're making them do. You know, like they're making it kind of a wacky thing, and they're playing up this ominous side of it, and they're kind of having them recreate scenes. Like you can kind of see that, oh, this is like fed like dialogue happening right here. Like this was not a natural conversation. Like, and that sucks. That's what I hate about a lot of these documentaries is they want you to recreate chaos. They want emotion. They want conflict. You know, if we're honestly trying to get to the bottom of this stuff, you have to throw all that stuff aside. If it happens, it happens. What you're trying to do is get this evidence and you know, really investigate this stuff in an authentic way. You can't be playing like some weird games and having like relationship issues on the show.
Well, I like Skinwalker, honestly. And Debbie, you do too, right?
Yeah.
Not so much. You're not into. Oh, but you're a believer.
I like the show too. It's all right. It's a good show.
It's okay, but I don't, you know, it's not one I record if I miss it, so I can still see it, you know.
But
yeah, I think
there's evidence there.
I think there's some evidence there, but I also agree with Jeremy that it's kind of I think they've taken some liberties to make it more exciting because that's what sells. You know?
Exactly. That's
right,
exactly what it is.
Yeah. And that eats up, you know, valuable scientific study. So you kind of get
and I think it kind of turns off actual scientists to want to get involved in it because they don't want to, they're not into that shenanigan part. They just, you know, they're interested in it, but they don't, you know, even like they did a mini series with Intruders back in the late 80s, early 90s, I think. You know, they basically the only thing they did was they bought the title of the book and maybe one scene, and then everything else was Hollywood licensed because they wanted to make it more exciting, as if it wasn't already weird enough. But they, you know, so it had really nothing to do with the actual story. By the time it was over with, it was almost unrecognizable, except for the title.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about that because on the one hand, there's merit to it because when I was a kid and I was watching that, like, holy cow. I mean, I was fascinated. I remember my mom and I watching that together, and it stirs curiosity. And then people start looking into these things. So on the one hand, you're twisting somebody's story, and fabricating something based off of truth, which is not representing reality properly. But at the same time, now you have all of these, like the whole generation of people, you know, because you told your story to Budd and then it was made into a series that are now fascinated with these topics, you know? So it's like a catch-22.
It served a purpose, but it wasn't, you know, it makes it difficult for someone like me when I get people come up to me and say, oh, I saw this miniseries and this, you know, and I'm like, I have to tell them that didn't happen to me. You know, that was somebody else's story, but it's hard, but it did serve a purpose. It presented the whole thing of, you know, aliens and people having these experiences. And there wasn't a lot of corny music and laugh tracks for the first time ever. So in that, it was good. So
Android Purity says, basically, we are just floating on a giant rock and none of us know for sure exactly how or why.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then Aaron Tyson says, but I do feel that quantum theory will unlock a lot of answers and introduce a lot more questions.
Yeah,
probably.
I constantly have questions, and then hearing these quantum physicists talk about it, it's like, what the hell? I don't know if I'll ever be able to understand it.
To wrap my head around that. So Tony, has your investigation, and same thing for you, Cherie and Debra, has your investigations, have they shaped your current spiritual belief, and did they challenge your previous paradigm?
Well, for me, absolutely. We have had so many experiences over the last 12 years that there is absolutely no rational explanation. You know, when you talk about ITC, and even doing EVPs is instrumental transcommunication because it requires a third-party device to capture and be able to replay. So even doing simple EVP, that digital recorder is your third-party device. And whether that's a spirit box or any of the other communication devices, what we've captured is physically impossible. People say, oh, you're picking up radio waves, or you're picking up. Okay, well, there's no radio in Phoenix that speaks in Tagalog, and my wife has gotten answers in Tagalog multiple times. There's no radio station saying Cherie Rathman. And if they are, we want to be paid for it because we're not aware of it. But it's not happening on command when we ask, and these things happen over and over and over that cannot be physically explained. And, everything from shadow figures captured. I mean, I'm talking a 3D shadow that comes off the wall, walks down the hall. These things are not on the second floor of a hospital with one window in it showing light, only that much of the doorway, yet the shadow walks right into the absolute darkness. These are physical impossibilities from the 3D world that we are aware of. So has it changed me and my outlook? Absolutely it has. Has it changed what I believe will happen after I pass away from this life? Absolutely. Do I have my own personal theories about what I think occurs? Of course I do. But it's based on 12 years of research. So, would I expect someone else to understand it or agree with me? No, of course not, because that's not how it works. Your opinion gets changed because of what you experience. People are at different levels and will experience things, will not. I didn't believe any of this 12 years ago until she said, let's go ghost hunting. And now I've seen things that I can't even try or imagine to explain. So it changes your entire outlook. Everything changes.
We have a comment from Mariah Canau, paranormal investigator herself. Hi, Mariah. She says, same with all these commercialized, quote, haunted locations, i.e. the Amityville home. So many embellishments.
Well, she's absolutely right about that. And that's to Jeremy's point about watching documentaries or even Skinwalker Ranch where they take liberties. Let's face it, any paranormal show out there, and I don't care which one you choose, do the same thing. I mean, there's not a network out there that truly cares about what happens in the paranormal. They care about ratings, and they'll do whatever they need to make those ratings happen. So do we think we're going to learn the truth about a field that we know almost nothing about from a TV network? No. But shows and documentaries like Jeremy did, Sounds of the Dead EVP, there was no craziness in there. You are hearing and seeing evidence from factual captures. And that's one of the things I loved about it so much.
And because you're able to, take years of investigation, right, and put it together in one documentary. When you're doing a study like that on video, you can't go episode to episode, week after week after week, and really make a compelling case. You need a lot of filler. You just have to. There's just no other way to do it. So Cherie, as a Catholic, are you still Catholic, or has that challenged your belief? You are. Okay.
Yeah.
So did it challenge your belief at all, or did it just kind of like fit into like the tapestry that is Catholicism?
Well, I am kind of like Jeremy, half and half. My husband always tells me, you've been investigating, you have all this evidence, you capture evidence, and still you're questioning if ghosts or spirit do exist.
It drives me crazy. We have some of the most amazing evidence, and she'll still say that to me, and I'll be like, do you remember like that EVP you were going to play? That spirit answered her same voice 4 or 5 times. And she's like, well, I don't know if I'm like, what? We were behind the biggest fence gate ever and walked 300 yards to this building. No one was allowed. And we had to have the mayor give us written permission to even get through the gate, let alone the building. She's getting a response. We are the only 2 people in this building. She's like, well, I'm not sure I believe. I'm like, oh my God.
And you're the one that started this whole thing, Cherie.
Right.
I know. It's just true. It's very interesting, and it's very fascinating, just like Jeremy. But it changed me just probably, when was the
5 months ago.
5 months ago, when Destination Fear went investigate at the Phelps Lodge, and after that, we stayed overnight at the hospital, the old Phelps Lodge Hospital. First time saw a shadow figure.
He saw it. Alan saw that.
And I'm like, I was screaming and my legs are shaking. And I keep asking Tony, and when I was watching this paranormal show, I'm like, how can they see a shadow figure? Shadow figure is dark. And if you're in dark place, how can you see that?
At night, you asked, how can I see a shadow at night?
Right.
Because they're
Well, guess
they're
what?
darker than dark. And
I
can
saw
see
one and I am like, okay, that's it. I'm done. But it didn't end up over there. It's now I believe like, yeah, you can see a shadow figure in dark.
Hey, Alan, I wanted to mention something to you
Mhm.
that you probably don't know. So you see, I do all these different documentaries. I'm not like a lot of these other documentary filmmakers in this world, though. I do documentaries about all kinds of different subjects that would be
Mhm.
mainstream acceptable science stuff, right? And I will tell you, people will find out that I do these alien and Bigfoot, and they will drop out of the interview, and they will be like, "Oh, I don't want to do the
Wow.
project."
Okay.
Yeah, because I investigate this other stuff, and it doesn't happen all the time. And some
Mhm.
people love it, you know. And I'll tell you, the UFO people love that I do the mainstreamy stuff too, because it validates what they're doing. And
Mhm.
like you said, I have no spin when I'm doing it. I'm trying to just portray
Mhm.
both sides. I'm not censoring anyone. You know, like, you could say whatever you want, and we're gonna show the whole thing. You know, but
Right.
it is disturbing to me how many people write it off like, oh, you want me to talk about mindfulness, but you do a UFO documentary, not interested. You know?
My response might be uh, people will do a documentary if the History Channel asks them to do it for a specific type of show, not a paranormal show, not a whatever show, a history show, right? They'll do an interview, but that same company is doing interviews for paranormal shows and separate, under this umbrella company.
I
But
usually
they're
don't
able
even get a chance to respond. They just cancel me.
that's yeah, it's so unfortunate because I
Yeah.
mean you're able to compartmentalize, right? This is one category, this is a separate category, broad range of interests. Okay, so let's talk about that then. And Deborah, you've been exposed to this for quite some time with your personal experiences up into your investigations. Why are we still dealing with this? Why are people so turned off and like they ostracize what we do and what we talk about? It's so odd to me.
There's still quite a stigma attached to any time, any
Yeah.
kind of experience, or like it's a lot better than it was 38, 39 years ago when we first let Budd write about our family, which took some convincing on his part. And in the beginning, in Intruders, every name, even the name of the place, is a pseudonym to protect our family from people, that might not, might want to do us harm or something. I had little kids that I wanted to protect them from the stigma too. I didn't want them to be made fun of at school and stuff. And things have changed. They've gotten better, but it's still bad. It's a shame that people are still having that mindset. I'm hopeful that, after this whole Tic Tac thing and all this UAP stuff has started to come forward, there's a really big stigma attached to pilots and military people who witness these things, and they're threatened, and they're to not talk about it or make it public because they're threatened to take away their wings or take away their pension, or wreck their life if they make these reports. And hopefully this whole, the recent reports that have come out from the government, the 140 some cases, that the fact that they didn't say that it wasn't, something extraterrestrial weird spoke volumes, and hopefully that'll change. But
Yeah.
there is definitely still a stigma. I worked for 15 years in a factory setting, and nobody knew who I was. Just because I didn't want to have to deal with it, and this was how I made my living, working in this factory. I didn't want to have to be put up with the abuse, the verbal abuse, that some people could come at with you. But I'm too old now. I don't care anymore. I mean, I'm so public out there now. It is what it is. I am what I am, and you either believe me or you don't. It's your prerogative. I'm good with either way because I question my own stuff most of the time too. Try to find the answers. So, but it is hard, and especially for somebody like Jeremy. You know, I feel sorry for you. It's not fair.
Well, Jeremy, let me ask you this: like, if you ask some of those people to do a documentary, but you didn't do paranormal documentaries, but you did do some religious study documentaries, do you think they would have still said yes?
Religion's a touchy subject. I suppose some people would. I suppose it depends also what my religious study documentary says. Like, am I saying Jesus is real and like this is all good? Maybe Muslim people might not like that, but the Jesus people would be like, this is great. So with religion, you can never win, really. There's always somebody that's going to be mad about it. And even sometimes from your own religion, you just didn't represent it in the right way or whatever. But I do think it's more acceptable than UFOs. Like, for some reason, people just look at that as nonsense, and like they just dismiss the evidence. They're like, it's all baloney, and you can be like, no, that some of it is fast, like it's very unexplainable. Like, I want to dismiss it. I'm going at it with that intention every single time, but I am also open-minded and honest. And so, like, there's plenty of these situations where you have no explanation as to what happened. And it seems like it's something we guess, right? Like, usually when we guess what it is, we're wrong also. But we'll say, oh, it's like some of the UFO people think they're angels. And that, this is some sort of religious spin. Some of them think it's Bigfoot and the UFOs are together with Bigfoot. And they have all kinds of wild theories about what could be happening.
There is a very fascinating movie on Amazon Prime, if anybody wants to check it out. Independent movie called, I think it's called Bigfoot, UFOs, and Jesus.
Okay.
And
it's right up your alley.
I'm not recommending it necessarily, but I'm saying that if somebody is interested in that perspective, it does offer some insight into that idea that there are people that really think that these are all angels, whether it be Bigfoot or UFOs, what have you. And we're just misinterpreting them, or they intend that, so could that be the case? Could these all be, servants of a higher power of some sort?
I mean, anything's possible, right? We're not saying we know. So anything.
Nobody wants to touch this one, huh?
But I will go on and say that is extremely unlikely. Like, I would be super shocked if that turns out to be the thing that's true.
Yeah.
Be very shocked.
I think the easiest explanation is that, combining Bigfoot, aliens, and Jesus together is that because most of these topics threaten personal opinions of what happens, or religious opinions, or the information that we were given about how we evolved, how we showed up here, whether you believe that came from a god, whether you believe that came from evolution. But the fact that aliens exist and they could, obviously most people believe are visiting us on a regular basis, but let's face it, that would rewrite everything. That would rewrite, if that was proven, it would rewrite religion, it would rewrite evolution, it would rewrite everything. And because so many people have so many deep structured beliefs on what they believe, that if you're going to throw out Bigfoot, aliens, but yet add Jesus into it, well, maybe that calms it down enough for them to watch. I don't know. It's just a thought, but those do challenge every belief that is out there today.
We gotta watch that.
Well, of course, you know we will.
Yeah, break out the popcorn for it.
I wonder, is there a Bigfoot, aliens, and Mohammed movie in like Saudi Arabia or something?
Not Muhammad Ali, okay?
There may be. Who knows?
But there might be. I mean, there's always somebody who takes their religious beliefs and overlay it with paranormal, activity. I think that's pretty common. Or just interpret things, differently than how we would. And a shout out to Aaron Tyson. Haha, yes, Alan, Bigfoot, UFOs, and Jesus. We both simultaneously watched that movie at the same time. So I won't share our messages back and forth to each other on the commentary. We'll leave it at that. And a shout out to Kevin Hale from Universal Secrets.
Hey, Kevin.
Hey, Kevin.
We love Kevin Hale, who, Universal Secrets used to be on KGRA radio, which Tony and Cherie are now. And Tony, Cherie, where can people find out more about you, your podcast?
Multiple places. We've got Entity Voices Paranormal Evidence live Facebook pages. We've got Entity Voices Paranormal Evidence. That's Facebook page too. We've got multiple Facebook pages. You can go to KGRA. You can see the schedule, see the times. But that's probably the easiest way to find out more about our show.
All right. And Debbie, where do people go to find out more about you and your book?
I have a website that I've maintained for 25 years. And it's debshome.com, DEBSHOMES, simple. And you can read all about the experience I had in 83, my time with Budd, things that have happened since then, and a lot of other paranormal UFO news, latest news and stuff. And you can write to me if you want to tell me about your experience you want to share. You can write me there.
Okay, that's great. And I had to get this last comment in by Mariah. As Lloyd Auerbach always says, you can't get rid of a Jewish ghost with a cross. I think we can leave it at that. Jeremy, what about you? How can people find out more about Sky Island storytelling?
So my website is theskyisland.com, and I have links to all my stuff there. Or you can just type my name into your search engine wherever you watch movies. And usually that pops up with where you can watch my movies.
Okay, links are in the show notes. And if you want to watch Sounds of the Dead EVP on Tubi for free, that link is also in the show description. Thank you guys for hanging out tonight. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you for having us, Alan.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And thank you everyone for hanging out with us tonight on Paranormal Now on the Paranormal Pop YouTube channel. Friendly reminder, if you're obsessed with coffee like I am, Mystery20, all caps, Mystery20 for a 20% discount on aliencoffeebean.com. Until next time, peace and love, everyone. And as always, live in the mystery.